white supremacist country? Go ahead,
Yes.
Tariq.
Yes. So the topic is America a white supremacist country? Not only is America a white supremacist country, we live in a complete white supremacist world. The whole entire planet is completely dominated in all areas of activity by systematic white supremacy. Not only is white supremacy a system, white supremacy is a religion, and I'm going to prove that on today's show. And in a religion, there has to be a God, there has to be a devil. White people who believe in white supremacy have made themselves into the gods. Black people are the devil, and there is no beginning or end to this system of mistreatment of Black people. It's a boogeyman concept. In horror movies, you have the boogeyman like Freddy Krueger, like Jason, like Michael Myers. And what makes these movies turn into franchises is that you don't know the origin of these monsters and you don't know how to get rid of the monsters. And that way you can scare people into perpetuity. The white supremacists have done this with systematic racism. Black people are the boogeyman. I'm going to scare you, give me money for the next religious sermon. So that's what I'm going to prove today, that white supremacy is a complete global system that dominates all areas of activity.
All right. Go ahead and respond, Jared.
Well, I'm fascinated to hear that white supremacy dominates the world. I suppose that means that white supremacy dominates Japan and Korea, China, all of these countries that are being extremely successful and are better than white countries in export balances, in the kinds of standard of living that they're achieving. Seems to me it's a pretty ineffective white supremacy if it's permitting these non-white countries to advance faster than white countries are. At the same time, in the United States, it seems to me that if it is a white supremacist country, it's one in which it is organized strictly for the benefit of whites so that they can dominate and rule over people of other races. I would assume that that's what's meant by white supremacy. Under those circumstances, it seems to me quite contradictory that we have an immigration policy that is reducing whites to a minority. It's difficult to me to understand why whites, if they really want to dominate, they are prepared to reduce themselves to a minority in which they have less influence, less power, less ability to make the country reflect their own character. Also, in a white supremacist society, presumably whites would be on top in all fields. Why is it that Asians have a higher per capita income, much more likely to get into an elite school? Why do even Hispanics, for example, have a higher life expectancy than whites? There are many, many respects in which the United States is not organized in a way that gives power to whites or that results in whites being on top of everybody else. All of these things would be completely impossible if the United States really were organized in a white supremacist way.
Okay, let me address all those things in unison. First, you said if we were in a white supremacist world, places in Asia like Japan, China, and Korea would not be doing better than white supremacist nations. Understand, China, Korea, Japan, and all the Asian nations are completely dependent and under the subjugation of white supremacy. There was an old saying in the United States, you don't have a Chinaman's chance in hell. They are allowed to thrive by the white supremacists. They can stop them from thriving at the drop of a hat. As a matter of fact, speaking of Japan, they blew up Japan at one point and then helped them get rebuilt back together. So the white supremacists dominate those Asian nations. Let's talk about Korea. We're talking about blowing up Korea right now because Korea is not playing ball, so to speak, and they just put trade sanctions on North Korea. So they can put sanctions on countries, they can blow up countries, they can do anything they want to countries, create computer glitches, do anything they want to destroy these nations anytime they feel. They let them thrive, and the operative term is let. Here in America, for a long time, Asians were looked down upon. Then all of a sudden, when they had the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Asians became the model minority because white supremacists elevated the Asians to undercut any type of black progress. So any progress that an Asian nation is doing, they are allowed to. Asians, as a matter of fact, some Asians have been looked at as honorary Nazis by Hitler. He looked at some of them as honorary Nazis. So again, the operative word is allow.
Gracious. So China is advancing, or Japan has done well, simply because the white nations, I assume you mean the United States, or are Germany, Sweden, Denmark, we're all in it together to let China progress? We're all in it together to let Korea and Japan progress? Or is it just the United States? Are we the top dog, or do we have to consult with anybody else in order to let the Chinese go on to eventually become a larger economy than ourselves?
Well, we know that China was still dominated and it was colonized by Britain until fairly recently, the economic hub of China.
19th century.
Yeah.
19th century, talking about the opium war. I'm talking about now.
Sir, we're talking about, sir, like in the 90s, Britain just really got their stronghold out of China. So when I talk about white supremacy, I'm not just talking about the United States. I'm having, I can't hear nothing here. Hold on.
We can hear you. We can
hear you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I was looking at the playback. Okay.
No worries. Go ahead.
Okay. But like I said, Britain just got their foothold out of China directly. They were directly colonizing them. And they still do economically. They still control the economics, the trade, all of that is because they control the trade. They can put trade sanctions on any of these Chinese, Asian, any of these nations. The white supremacists control directly and indirectly. And the most indirect way they control nations is through trade sanctions. They're doing that to non-white nations all over the country.
Wait. Japan and China both have an enormous trade surplus with the United States and with Europe. They are outcompeting us on trade. We are just generously letting them sell more things to us. We are just generally letting them accumulate our assets. We're just generally letting them buy our own factories. This is all just some sort of deep white supremacist plan to make them look like they're controlling us when we're in fact actually controlling them.
Yes, you're controlling them, and the white supremacists are getting a stronghold over there in Asian countries. This is why many of you are over there, especially you white extremists. This is why so many of you are having relationships with the Asian women. You guys you look at some of the big top white supremacist corporation owners, many of these guys, the Rupert Murdochs, all of these people are tied in with these Asians and Eurasians. Look at Trump. Trump has a Eurasian. So there's always been that connection. You allow them to thrive. And you can stop it at any time you want to.
Really?
Oh,
you
yeah.
mean, how would the United States stop China from increasing its economy? How would we do that?
Well, you can just put trade sanctions on them. You can stop them by putting trade sanctions on them, or you can just blow them up.
Look, we have tried to put trade sanctions on North Korea, which is a tiny, small economy, and they still don't do what we want them to do. They have continued to develop their nuclear weapons. If North Korea, which is a tiny, insignificant country, can thumb its nose at the United States and continue developing nuclear weapons, despite our telling them not to, it seems to me we have a very, very feeble white supremacist world order.
No, you don't, because they're making threats against North Korea now. They're talking about blowing that place up when the economic sanctions don't work. The white supremacists will just go blow the country up. The white supremacists have two tactics. They have deception and they have violence. And when deception doesn't work, they have no problem going in there with the jackals, the CIA, whoever, to take the people out. That's the MO of the white supremacists, and they've done that consistently throughout history.
Okay, and if the Chinese don't play ball with us, if the Chinese decide that they want to take the Spratly Islands or they want to take the Senkaku Islands from somebody that we think ought to have them, then we're just going to blow them up too because we're white supremacists?
Because the Chinese and many of the Asian countries are playing ball. They are playing ball. They're doing what they're told. And the minute they stop doing what they're told, like North Korea, all of a sudden we see the trade sanctions and we see the nuclear threats and we see the little rocket man talk.
Well, so, I'm fascinated to learn that by trade sanctions, we can control nations that actually have a huge trade surplus with us. That will be a new one for all the economies.
They have a trade surplus with us because we allow, well, not we, the white supremacists who run the country allowed it. That's why they have a trade surplus.
I see, because we permit them to do this, even though it means that some of our businesses go out, all of our jobs get exported to China. We must think that's a great thing. If our manufacturing jobs disappear to China, we must think that's a wonderful thing because we're stupid white supremacists.
Look, a lot of the white supremacists are not that smart, but the main ones are. And I've always said this: the white supremacists are hands down the most smartest people on the planet. And smart doesn't have to do with IQ. You can be deceptively smart, and they're smart enough to use deception.
Now, so you said something earlier that I found quite fascinating. You said that at some point when the Black Civil Rights Movement was making progress, that was when white people decided to elevate the Chinese and the Japanese, elevate the Asians, and make them into a model minority, which they would not have been if we had not let them. So in effect, we tricked them into being more successful and smarter than we are, while at the same time we have tricked Black people into being less successful and less smart than we are. Is that what white supremacists have done?
Wait, one second. Wait, can you guys hear me? I'm on my end. Hold on one second.
We can hear you fine.
Yeah, we can hear you
fine. Because I'm streaming this on my thing, and they're saying there's audio static. Oh my goodness.
No worries, no worries.
All right, can you guys hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Somebody said static hearing. Okay, no, I'm talking to the audience. I'm trying to see if they can't hear. Sound like that. Okay. They can barely hear. Hold on one second. Y'all bear with me. 1 second, guys.
No worries, no worries. Take your time.
I want to address what Jared was saying.
Everything good?
Hello?
Hello?
Well, hold on 1 second. Okay, right. How about in the chat room? How was that? Pushing the earphone? What are they saying? Okay.
Tariq, are you googling the answers right now?
No, I'm streaming live, and the people are saying they can't hear me, so I can't stream live. I just have to use, I have to download it. So I got to stop streaming live on my end. So I'm not googling anything, but let me stop streaming.
No, I'm just joking with you. Yeah, no,
I'm gonna have to stop. Okay.
Okay. You have permission. Yeah, you have permission. You can use this video on your channel. You can mirror it or whatever you need to do.
Okay. All right. Let me just do this.
All right. Let's get back into it. Let's get going.
Let me repeat my question here.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
You said something about how when the Black Civil Rights Movement got going, then the white supremacists, so we white supremacists, decided that we were going to elevate the Asians into a model minority. And I suppose they would not have been a model minority unless that we had permitted them to. So we more or less tricked or browbeated or somehow made them into a group that has a lower crime rate than whites, lower illegitimacy rates than whites, more successful academically than whites. We tricked them into that. Whereas in the case of Black people, we tricked them into having a higher crime rate and a higher illegitimacy rate and a higher poverty rate. Does that pretty much summarize your view?
Well, the thing is, Jared, even before the Civil Rights Movement, the Asians had a low crime rate and Black people had a low crime rate, but you still had the yellow peril. You still dominated and mistreated them and used coded language and not so coded language to disparage them openly.
Wait, I want to get back to this model minority stuff.
That's where I'm going with it. That's where I'm going with it. Before they were the model minorities, the crime rate was low with people of Asian descent. They weren't committing crimes. They didn't have out of wedlock babies. They were just doing their thing. Nothing changed with them. Nothing changed with them after the Civil Rights Movement other than the white supremacists wanted to use them to undercut Black society. Nothing changed.
Well, but then we used them to undercut Black society, but in a way that in effect undercuts white society, because Asians are now, they have a higher income than whites, more likely to get into elite schools, and they have, as I say, less likely to be in jail. In other words, we have created a model minority that is even more successful than the white supremacists. Again, this sounds like very stupid white supremacy to me.
That's not true. They're not more successful than the white supremacists.
Not more successful.
They're not more successful at all. Look at all the major corporations in America. Who owns
they are
who's running law enforcement? They don't run all the major corporations. The Japanese are allowed to do anything they're allowed to do. The white supremacists allow them to. They're not successful or more successful as people who believe in white supremacy, because the people who believe in white supremacy still control the resources.
Wait, the Asians have higher per capita income by far. Indian Americans, for example, have a much higher per capita income than white Americans. Chinese, Japanese, as I say, they're much more likely to get into elite schools, and there is nothing stopping. There is nothing. Look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is full of Asians who have these great programming jobs. They are extremely successsul. Now, if 5% of the population, just let me finish, please. If 5% of the population does not yet have a dominant position in running Fortune 500 companies, that will just come in time, given the kinds of advantages that they now have. Again, this seems like a very, very nearsighted and foolish white supremacist policy to build up a group that is being more successful than whites themselves.
They're not. I mean, just saying that they're more successful doesn't mean that they are more successful. You allow
what they have to be.
You allow them to thrive. And the minute they do something that you don't like, just like any other immigrant group, Hispanics, they were brought in to undercut Black society as well. Now that they're used as a political point, now the Hispanics are bad. Now all of a sudden you're throwing people out of the country. So the key word is allowed. You can do anything to any immigrant group you want to, because as white supremacists, that's what you do.
Wait, if we decided that the Asians were getting too big for their britches,
yes,
what would we do?
You would throw them out of America, just like you're doing Hispanic groups, Muslim groups.
Wait. They're American citizens. We would strip them of citizenship and throw them out. Is that what we white supremacists would do?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
I mean, Black people are technically citizens, but the Constitution is completely violated when it comes to Black people. They violate every statute of the Constitution when it comes to Black people, and we're citizens. The Constitution and citizenship means nothing in a system of white supremacy.
Okay, how is the citizenship of Black people violated daily? How is for example, how is the separation of powers in the Constitution violating the citizenship of Black people?
Oh my God! The Second Amendment, Philando Castile, he was legally owned a gun, got his brains.
No, I'm talking about the separate. You said every single article.
I'm just giving you an example of. I can go down all the statutes: the 8th Amendment, the 13th and 14th Amendment. We don't get equal protection under the law. Black people can get legally murdered by a white supremacist race soldier, and nothing is going to happen. The Constitution does not protect us. So the Constitution is toilet paper to white supremacists. Your boy Richard Spencer even said, "I don't care nothing about the Constitution. I care about survival."
Again, how does the separation of powers oppress Black people? You said every aspect of the U.S. Constitution oppresses Black people. How does the fact that the president has to be 35 years old, how does that oppress Black people? How is it that the citizenship of Black people is ignored by every aspect of the Constitution?
You playing a word game. I didn't say that. I said it doesn't protect Black people. I didn't say the Constitution oppresses. White supremacy oppresses all non-whites. The Constitution doesn't protect Black people. Watch the words, Jared. Let's watch the words. I'm very clear about the words I use, sir.
Not clear to me, but you seem to think. So let me get something else straight.
Yes, sir.
We white supremacists brought Asians in to undercut Black people, right?
Yes, we did.
Now, why did we want to do that? Why did we want to bring in yet another group, unlike ourselves, who is increasing in numbers, who is electing people like themselves to the Senate, got people like themselves on the Supreme Court? Why did we bring yet another group that is different from us? And what did we achieve in terms of oppressing Black people by bringing these Hispanics in?
Well, you classified Hispanics as white. 95% of Hispanics are classified as white because all white Anglo numbers are declining. They've been declining for years, and you need other groups to help boost your numbers. So Asians are the reserve white people now, because many Hispanics are classified as white to boost up the numbers for people classified as white. So you always bring in these different groups to boost up the numbers.
Wait.
Sounds like Asian supremacy to me, right?
If we cared about the number of white people, why didn't we bring in more white people? Wouldn't that be the obvious thing to do, rather than bringing in people who are obviously not white?
Well, the thing is, classify a white person. What makes a white person white genetically?
That's very easy to look. Just look at the DNA. The DNA of white people says that they are from Europe. The DNA of most Hispanics says that they are largely from Latin America. They're Amerindians. No, white people, I don't think you have any difficulty distinguishing a white person from an American Indian, do you? White people are obviously white.
Well,
and if we wanted more white
Irish
people,
weren't considered white when they first came over. The Irish weren't considered white until the late 1800s. So I just want to know what this white thing is. And you said it's from Europe, so it contradicts. There's a contradiction there. Italians weren't considered white really until the 1930s and 40s, sir. They weren't considered white. So
the idea that Irish were not considered white is a silly myth that has been circulated by people who should know. Now, let me finish. Wait. No. Let me finish.
White were not white. Okay.
Mr. Nasheed, let me finish.
Go ahead, Jared. Okay.
The British hated and despised the Irish for a whole host of reasons, one being colonialism, one being the fact that they were Catholic. They did not like them and they did not want them coming into the United States, but no one would ever have suggested that they were some race other than white. Yes. The idea that some kind of magic, they suddenly became white.
They would say that the Irish were simian. They would say that they were an ape-like race. If you look up simian Irish, you would see Irish looking like monkeys. They would say they were a whole other species. Look at the Notre Dame logo. It's a fighting Irish who has a simian-like face. They've always had that negative stereotype of the Irish. They were allowed to be white later on, just like Italians were allowed to be white later on.
And so you're telling me that pretty soon the Asians are going to be allowed to be white if it suits us.
Sir, according to the white supremacists, they determine who gets to be white and non-white. Asians weren't considered white. The Greek weren't considered white. There's a reason why they call Italians Guineas. Guinea is another code word for African. So they've always allowed certain groups to be white, and they would take their white status away and give it back when it.
If we really cared about maintaining a white majority, why do we let Africans into the country? Africans, according to your view, Africans are the devil people. Africans are the whole reason for white supremacy. Africans are the only reason we ever care about Asians, because that's a way to put blacks down. The only reason we have anything to do with Hispanics is another way to put blacks down. Apparently, white supremacists are obsessed with black people and want to put them down. Why, in that case, have we admitted more immigrants from Africa than ever came to the United States in the slave trade?
There are not that many Africans that are allowed over here. I was just in Africa.
Why even one?
Because certain African people, and I'm going to tell you, when I was over in Africa, they are screened to the point where if they come over here, they're going to have to directly work with the white supremacists to undercut black people too.
Okay.
White supremacists bring in people, and they make sure that African immigrants do not hook up with African Americans. There were papers in the 1970s trying to prevent African Americans from linking up with people in Africa. Let's go back to the Marcus Garvey movement, back to the 1920s and the 1900s, when black people were trying to go back to Africa with the Marcus Garvey movement. They went in and undermined that as well. They've never wanted us to hook up with each other. So they will bring over African people as long as they don't hook up with us and do the bidding of white supremacists.
Oh, no, okay. Now let me get this straight.
Yes.
The white supremacists let in Africans after they have carefully screened them to make sure that they will cooperate in a white supremacist system of holding down and exploiting American-born blacks. Is that correct?
No. Didn't say all that.
Okay, yeah. School me on this.
They don't hook up with us and make sure they're on their P's and Q's. I was over there in Africa. They told me there's so many hoops they have to jump through to get over here. They have to change their names. They were telling me all types of horror stories. Yes, they were told that they shouldn't even use their African names if they came over here.
They don't use their African names? I've never heard. I mean, every Nigerian I know that lives here has an African name. Now, did they tell you that they were told, okay, we have this white supremacist system going here, and we're going to let you in only if you cooperate with our white supremacist system and hold the brothers down? Is that what they're told?
They didn't say all that. But the thing is, the reason why they would have to come over here anyway is because the white supremacists have destroyed their own nations over there. Understand?
Okay.
Global. The reason why they would have to come over here is because all the resources are hoarded over here.
Okay, now all right.
And they try to get over there.
Okay, now I have another question for you.
white supremacists are shooting them down in the ocean. So
why is it?
The story about the white supremacists as well.
Why is it that we white supremacists are happy for the Asian countries to develop? Why are we happy for the Chinese to go over and help exploit Africa? But we don't want Africa to succeed. I mean, is this? Why do we care? What is it about us that? Yeah,
that's a great question.
Yeah, give me an answer.
White supremacy has a racial hierarchy.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's white on top. You might have the Asians on the next.
Yeah.
Arabs here.
Yeah.
Hispanic whites here. And blacks have always been on the bottom. Blacks got to be on the bottom because black people, we have the genetic capacity to annihilate the entire planet sexually. Because when we procreate with you, the offspring is going to be non-white. So black people operate a genetic threat. So we have to be on the bottom. White supremacy is crystallized on how black people are mistreated. This is why when you bring Asians over, the Asians start doing their little nigger jokes when they get around you. So all these other groups are, their lot in the system of white supremacy is determined on how much they mistreat black people.
What was that about how much they dislike black? In other words, we train the Asians to dislike black people.
No, Jared. Listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah, I couldn't hear that last part there.
When you get other groups around, when you bring in other groups, other Asian groups, other Hispanic groups, when you bring them in, for them to determine their status with you, to become honorary white supremacists themselves, they have to display anti-black hatred. You understand?
Oh, I see.
For example, let me give you an example. Peter Liang. Peter Liang is an Asian guy who shot a black man in New York. Asians all around the country got together to protect this Asian man from killing a black person. So they have to be honorary white supremacists to a certain degree in order to remain in good standing with
to remain in, wait a minute. This guy was a policeman, as I recall, and he fired his weapon and it ricocheted off the wall, and it happened to kill a black person who was in one of these public housing things. It was very, very clear that he did not intend to kill this guy, and it is not at all surprising that people should rally to his defense. Now, I'm again interested in this idea that we can make honorary white people. And where is your evidence that that Asians, if they're the number 2 bunch, where's this notion that they're honorary white people?
So let me back up a minute. You said he didn't mean to kill him, but he was in violation of pulling his gun. He shouldn't pull his gun out. He shouldn't have the finger on the trigger. He lied about what happened on the police report. So if you're shooting people by mistake, why is it that black officers go to jail when they shoot people by mistake? A white kid was shot down in New Orleans by a black officer by mistake, and they gave the officer 40 years. So there's always that white supremacist double standard there. And you extend that double standard to Asian groups and many Hispanic groups, just like the guy who shot Philando Castile up in Minnesota. But that's neither here nor there. So your next question was what, sir?
Well, then let me have. I'll approach things from a different point of view. I am fascinated by your conviction that well, first of all, okay, now it's interesting that you said the reason white people are so obsessed with blacks. I mean, it sounds like everything we do has to do ultimately with black people. What we do with Asians, what we do with Hispanics. Hold on. What we do with all of these other people is merely a function of our absolute obsession with black people, is what it sounds like.
White supremacists, yes.
The white supremacists probably think, 8 hours of every day at least wondering what to do about black people. We're just obsessed with black people. And the reason for that.
24 hours.
24 hours. Sorry. Okay. No, we are thinking about black people 24 hours a day. We wake up in the morning and we spit on our hands. We roll up our sleeves and think to ourselves, what are we going to do to black people today? Is that how we operate?
Well, the white supremacists, again, white supremacy is a religion. And
white religion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I want to ask a question real quick. Tariq, do you believe that Jared is a white supremacist? I just want to be clear because you keep saying white supremacist. Do you believe he is in that category?
Yes, he is.
Of course he does. Of course. All white people are white supremacists.
No, they're not. All white people are not white supremacists. No, they're not. That's why.
How do you classify the difference?
A white supremacist is a person who believes through speech, thought, and action that they should dominate, control, and mistreat non-white people based on supremacist. That's what a white supremacist is. And all white people are not like that. That's not true. That's why I don't say the white man and white people are this, that. No, white supremacists think like that.
Okay, now who are they specifically then? Who believe that we should dominate, control, and mistreat black people?
Well, the thing is, the white supremacists used to be open about who they were, but now they're not open. They have to codify their language, so we don't know who the white supremacists are. So now I use the term suspected white supremacists if I'm not sure a person is a white supremacist or not, because there's no master list of white supremacists.
Okay, then how come we got into a situation where white people can't be open about it? That sounds like another failure of white supremacy.
No, white people can be very open about systematic white supremacy. They are open about it. Well, who's not?
Wait. You just said they're not open. You just said we have to call them suspected white supremacists.
For a long time, they couldn't be open about it because they had to codify the language. Now that we have Trump in office, people are becoming more open about white supremacy now, this day and age, right now, 2018. They are now.
Who, for example, who is an open white supremacist now?
Well, you're an open white supremacist, Richard Spencer.
No, wait. I have no desire to dominate or mistreat anybody. Who do you think I want to mistreat? Do you think I want to mistreat you?
But yeah, you kind of justify that, Jared. And
I don't justify it at all. I don't want anybody mistreated.
But you say that black people have an inferior IQ. And if we have an inferior IQ, you must have a superior IQ. So that, by definition, is white supremacy, right? Wait.
No, not at all. You said it means to dominate and mistreat. Those things are very important. I don't want to dominate or mistreat anyone of any race.
But you justify it. I just pointed out.
I'm not justifying it at all. I'm entirely opposed to it.
That's mistreating people based on race. You just justified Peter Liang killing somebody who was black. You made an excuse for murder. And that's justifying mistreatment, sir. Finding ways to justify mistreating black people, that's white supremacy. You can call it it ultimately ends up mistreating black people, and there's always a justification for it, sir.
Wait. If I look at the evidence and I conclude that black people, on average, have an IQ that is lower than that of white people, and I think the evidence for this is overwhelming. And if I say this in public, I become a pariah. Charles Murray, who has written about this, cannot speak on a college campus without being shouted down by white people. Right. Now, all of those people on the campus, are they secret white supremacists and they secretly support Charles Murray, or are they really opposed to the idea of Charles Murray, and that's why they shout him down? There
are many people who are opposed to Murray, but there are many people who support him. We don't know. We can't quantify. We don't know who supports him and who's opposing him. But there are a lot of. This is why I say you have white supremacists and white people. All white people are not white supremacists. There's a lot of.
How many do you reckon are white supremacists?
I have no idea. I cannot quantify it whatsoever because I know that the white supremacists are the most powerful people.
How do you? Well, wait. The most powerful people in the United States. We can name them.
Not the United States, on the planet. The white supremacists are the most powerful people on the planet, not the United States, the planet. The white supremacists dominate the planet.
Okay, then if we pick out the most powerful people on the planet, then we can be sure they're white supremacists?
Yes, most of them, yes, absolutely. Or suspected white supremacists. Some are white supremacists, some are suspected white supremacists. The most powerful people on the planet.
Probably
white supremacists or suspected white supremacists. Like Donald Trump, he's one of the most powerful men on the planet. He's a suspected white supremacist. Some people say he is a white supremacist. I say he's a suspected white supremacist. His entire cabinet is full of suspected white supremacists.
Okay. Now, so some of the most powerful people in the world are members of the U.S. Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. Are they white supremacists? Is Ellen Kagan a white supremacist? Is Sonia Sotomayor, is she a white supremacist?
Well, let's look at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court put down a ruling, and it's never been overturned, that a black man has no rights a white man is bound to respect.
Oh, and for heaven's sake.
The Supreme Court used the word white supremacy and black inferiority in the Taney ruling with Dred Scott, and they never overturned that. As a matter of fact, the Dred Scott decision was used in the court case a couple of years ago. So, the white supremacists, they dominate the Supreme Court as well. Look at the documents. I'm talking law. This ain't my opinion. I'm talking law.
So you're telling me that a black person has no rights that a white person is bound to respect? Is that what you believe?
According to evidence and according to the Supreme Court ruling in the Dred Scott decision.
But okay, well, hold on. So if I walk into your house and I put a gun to your head and I say, I like the look of that chair you're sitting in, I like the look of that microphone, and I walk out with that, and you call the police are going to say, whoops, sorry, a black man has no property rights that a white man is bound to respect, and so I'll walk away free.
Sir, you can come in and shoot me and kill me. And if you have a good enough lie, you can walk away scot-free. Look at George Zimmerman.
Wait, why should I have to lie? In a white supremacist, look, if you have no rights that I'm bound to respect, why do I even have to lie? Why can't I say, hey, I just shot the guy because I felt like it?
Well, they have done that. Well, that's what George Zimmerman did.
Wait. You really believe that? You really believe that?
Then he had to build a cockamamie story that he was beaten within inches of his life. So you got to get the lie looking good.
Wasn't George Zimmerman Hispanic though? I don't think he was even white.
Oh, come on. He was an honorary white man. Honorary white man.
Honorary.
He's white.
Anybody who attacks a black person's an honorary white man, right? Come on, that's what it boils down to. A policeman, a black policeman who shoots a black person is an honorary white man.
That's another deception tactic. That's a deception tactic where you temporarily deny whiteness. All of a sudden, he's not white no more. I'm not white. I'm Jewish. I'm not white. I'm Native American. I'm not white. I'm Hispanic. Oh, that's a
okay. Okay, so
go ahead.
So Mr. Nasheed, in your view, what George Zimmerman did was he said to himself, look at that black guy. I think I'm going to follow him and shoot him. And that was the long and the short of it.
And he knew that he would be protected. That's exactly what he did. He knew he would be protected, and he was protected. He knew that the community, the court system was going to look out for him. White supremacists understand the mindset of other white supremacists, and they understand the code that other white supremacists are on.
Let's get back to the Supreme Court. Now, if it really was the case that no black person has any kind of right that a white person is bound to respect, we would be living in a completely, utterly different world. And I think you must be able to imagine that that's the case.
So, Mr. Taylor, what different world will we be living in if that were the case?
Wait, if that really were the case, a white person could kill any black person anytime with complete impunity, and we know that
what happens. What are you talking about? That happens on a regular basis. That happens all the time.
Wait. You're telling no. Look, if in other words, if I decide that I don't like Barack Obama, he's a black man, I'm a white man, and I track him down and I shoot him, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm white, he was black, bye-bye, and the police will let me walk free.
Well, that's the president. So
what?
There's an exception. He was the president, so there's an exception to that. You just can't shoot a former president because.
Okay, how about a former governor, Doug Wilder, governor of Virginia? Can I shoot him?
Well, the thing is, we're not.
Or a black policeman. A black policeman. Why not?
Well, you can. You can. There have been black people who are off duty who've been killed before.
Wait. Why not in uniform?
But the thing is, especially if you become what I call a race soldier, I won't even call them police officers. If you become a police officer and you believe in white supremacy, which the FBI said law enforcement has been infiltrated by white supremacists, they can kill a black person with impunity. And
I see. And they do it all the time, right?
There's a system to protect him. The court system is going to protect him. The jury system is going to protect him. The prosecution is going to protect him. That's a reality. And that's always been a reality. There's nothing new about that. Nothing new about that.
Okay, now what if I'm a mere honorary white man? If I'm an Asian, can I kill a black person with impunity too, or do I have to be white?
Not if you're an honorary or Asian, and also we're talking about a lot of just hypothetical situations.
Well, but you're telling me that you have no rights that I'm bound to respect.
Norm. I'm talking about the norm. Now,
the norm.
I find an exception every blue moon. For example, you can't find too many white officers who've been put in jail for killing a black person. It's like one every 20 years. So the exception doesn't negate the rule, Mr. Taylor. You know that. Just like for example, a lot of African immigrants. You spoke about Nigerian immigrants. Do you know what we're talking about IQ? Nigerian immigrants, they come over here and academically outperform whites and Asians. They do much better than Asians. So that kind of throws the whole IQ thing out the window. We're talking about race and IQ.
Well, but why does a white supremacist society permit such a thing?
Well, you can't really do anything what's going on in that person's mind. You know, a person is smart, they're smart. But
well, wait. If people are smart, they're smart. You're assuming, of course, that on average, black people are just as smart, maybe smarter than white people, right?
not maybe smarter, but we have the same level of intelligence, of course.
Okay. Of course. All right. It goes without saying.
No, are you saying we don't have the same level of intelligence as whites?
Okay. I was just checking on that. I thought you might think that black people are actually smarter. But let's get back to the Supreme Court.
But you didn't answer that. You danced a little bit. You're dancing with the stars. Do you think that black people have equal intelligence as whites, Mr. Taylor?
No, I don't. On average, the black IQ is 85.
Why aren't black people as smart? What is it about black people that makes them less smart?
Oh, well, there are all kinds of things that go into what is called intelligence, the structure of the brain, the way the gray matter and the white matter interact, the rapidity of signals transmitted on neurons. We don't really know in 100% the biological underpinnings of intelligence, but I think the evidence is overwhelming that East Asians on average are somewhat more intelligent than whites, and whites are more intelligent than blacks. But aside, I know you're not going to agree on that, and you're not even interested in the evidence.
Let me unpack that, because if black people are less intelligent, why the need for systematic deprivation? Why would the white supremacists do things like not allow black people to read, make it illegal for black people to read, which is what happened here in the United States for a long time? Why would they do that for people who are already less intelligent?
We're talking about the United States today. You're saying the United States today is a white supremacist society. I do not deny that in the past, the United States could be described as white supremacist. But let's get back to the Supreme Court.
But you didn't answer the question. That's a very valid question. If we were, and they were saying the same thing you're saying back then, back in the 1800s, the 1900s, they would say the same thing, that black people, our IQs are just not high. We're not as intelligent. Thomas Jefferson, he wrote a whole book, Letters from the State of Virginia, about how our IQs, not our IQ, but how our intelligence level was just so low. But at the same time, black people were not allowed to read. So why would you not allow a people to read and make it a crime if they were already less intelligent? I'm trying to understand.
First of all, Letters from the State of Virginia, it has only a few little remarks about blacks. It's about the state of Virginia. I mean, I realize that you think that white people are obsessed with by black people, and that's all they ever think about 24 hours a day.
And you know, that book was the foundation of modern white supremacy ideology. You know that.
Oh, okay. No, I don't in fact know that, but Letters from the State of Virginia covers a lot.
Go on and on about how inferior black people were.
Look, there are just a few passages in that book about black people.
And how inferior we were in that book. In those few passages, he was talking about how inferior we were.
He thought that blacks on average were less intelligent than whites. Now, nobody ever pretended, no one ever pretended that there were not some blacks who could read. No one ever suspected otherwise. He knew about, Thomas Jefferson knew about blacks who could read as well. No one ever doubted that they could read.
Why is it illegal for black people to read if we're just so less intelligent?
Well, the whole idea, in those states and at those times in which it was illegal, now don't forget, slavery was an extremely variegated thing. Any generalization about slavery is likely to be completely wrong, because it was so different depending on the time, so different depending on the place. There were, in some circumstances, laws against teaching slaves how to read, not blacks in general, but slaves how to read, because it was thought that that might contribute to some sort of slave revolt or some attempt to gain freedom. But let's set that aside. I like to talk about the United States today.
Well, let me correct you though, because even after slavery, during the Jim Crow era, it was you had white supremacists monitoring black people so they wouldn't read in public as well. So reading was something that was looked down upon with black people even after slavery. And when black people started to get their own schools and their own communities, they were torn down and burned down by the white supremacists. But go ahead, brother.
Well, I'd like to hear examples of schools that were burned down by white supremacists, because after all, even
Oklahoma in 1921, Wilmington in the 1800s, Rosewood, I can just list goes on and on. But go ahead.
Those were race riots. In any case, now back to the Supreme Court. You may recall that when Sonia Sotomayor, now in your view, she may be an honorary white for all I know, but when she was appointed to the Supreme Court by Barack Obama, she said that, well, it was pointed out that she had said that she thought that a wise Latina woman would be a better justice than a white man. This is well known about her. And when she came up for confirmation, the Senate, of course, was overwhelmingly white. Now, why would a white supremacist Senate, and surely some of those people must be white supremacists and not just suspected white supremacists because they're powerful, they're senators. And you said the most powerful people in the world, presumably including the premier of China, are white supremacists. So there must have been some white supremacists there. Why would they confirm a woman who says that a Latina woman will make a better judge than a white man? Isn't that a grave insult to white supremacy?
No, because most Latinos
okay.
are still white and they just have different ethnic backgrounds. See, ethnicity and race are two different things. She's still classified as white. That woman is still white. She just has a different ethnic background, sir. I don't think that old Latinos, 95% of them are classified as white.
No.
Sir.
Well,
I'm not making that up. You right now, you just use the I'm white and I say so narrative, which is just more white supremacy.
Okay. So when she says something insulting to white people, she's talking about Latinos as opposed to white men. She is making a distinction between a Latina woman and a white man. And so let me finish.
He's white.
Please let me finish. So she is drawing a distinction. She says, I'm Latina, you guys are white, and I'm going to make a better judge than you. And all those white supremacist senators, they said, oh, we'll let that pass because she's really white just like us. Was that what they thought?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. We can move on. That's all I needed to hear.
They have Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court.
Is he a white supremacist?
He's the mascot for white supremacy.
Is he a white supremacist?
No, you cannot be a black white supremacist.
I see. Why
He's
not?
a mascot for white supremacy. You can't be. You can't be a black white supremacist. You can be a tool for white supremacy, and that's what he is, a tool.
All right, but a Hispanic can be a white supremacist.
Yes, they can. Understand?
And an Asian
Hispanic, they identify with Spain. They don't identify with the Native American roots. The root word is Spain. Spain is still in Europe, and they identify with that. And the white supremacists, they give them this on and off, back and forth cat and mouse status. But ultimately, it's a family dispute between other white people.
Wait. So Puerto Ricans, they think of themselves as Spaniards. Is that right?
Yes, many of them do. As a matter of fact,
they think they're Spaniards.
When you go to these countries, you see the darker Puerto Ricans are dominated and mistreated by the lighter Puerto Ricans because the lighter Puerto Ricans see themselves as white, sir.
Okay, and by seeing themselves as white, that makes them white, and they become the mascots and the tools of the real white supremacists. Okay, I understand. Now, do you remember James Watson? He's the co-discoverer of DNA. Now, he was probably the most famous living scientist in the world. And he started talking about race differences in IQ, and he concluded that perhaps black people, for genetic reasons, are less intelligent than whites. Now, you may recall that he was absolutely pilloried. All the white people practically in America got on his back and said, no, you can't talk about that. And he lost his job, he lost all kind of his prestige, he's disappeared from sight. That will happen to just about any white person in America, no matter how prominent, no matter how prestigious. If he starts talking about racial differences in IQ, out the door. He is considered a moral pariah. Why is that the case if we really are all white supremacists anyway?
Well, the thing is, the whole intelligence thing or the IQ thing, it's used by white supremacists to justify the maldistribution of resources and the mistreatment of people.
Exactly. So that should be part of American dogma, right?
Really? Like,
wait.
I don't understand. Elaborate on that.
As you say, if the idea is that black people are less intelligent than whites, and that justifies what you say, the maldistribution of wealth in the United States, why is it that someone that makes that argument about race differences in IQ is considered a demon and a pariah and is shoved out of respectable society?
Well, because usually they have blatant white supremacist views anyway, and they're just using IQ and all that stuff to justify. See, the IQ thing, that thing started really with Nazi Germany.
You're not answering my question.
I'm trying my best. I'm trying to answer your question, but I'm telling you, the IQ thing was started in Nazi Germany
That's not true.
Be justified to harm people who were classified as non-white then. Yes, it was. They used IQ to justify putting people in concentration camps. Yes, they did.
Wait, IQ goes back to before the First World War. That's before Nazi Germany. Sanford Binet, the Binet test, that goes way back before the Second World War. But my point is this: if, as you believe, the ideas about racial superiority and inferiority are used to justify white dominance over blacks, why is it that anyone in the United States today who openly talks about racial differences in IQ and talks about the lower black IQ becomes a social pariah? Why?
Because it's not true. That's why, and it can be debunked.
What? But you say all the white supremacists believe it.
Jared, but it can be debunked. That's the problem. See, that's what the clash is. It can be debunked. Like, I've heard you say that black people have a low IQ and there was nothing in Africa, and black people didn't have two-story buildings, and there was no will, and they couldn't tame beasts of burden. So all of that stuff is so easily debunked. This is why people, a lot of times when they take these white extremists, we look at them as pariahs because that information is just not true.
But wait. If it is not true, and everyone knows it's not true, then okay, maybe there are a few benighted goofballs like me who haven't got the message yet, but if it's generally accepted as not true, then that completely blows apart the justification for white supremacy, right?
No, it doesn't, because enough people believe that. Enough people believe it's true. And the people who want to believe it's true are the white supremacists, because that's part of the religion of white supremacy.
Okay. Now,
anything negative about black people to justify the mistreatment and domination.
Okay. And those people are the most powerful people in the world.
Yes, they are, the white supremacists.
Okay. Then if the most powerful people in the world believe this, surely one of them, or maybe even two of them, perhaps even three of them, would have come to James Watson's assistance when he started talking about race and IQ. Why? How come not one of them put his head above the parapet and said, hey, Watson's right?
Well, they might not have done it publicly, but there's an old saying that white supremacists don't get fired, they get transferred. So they probably—
Is that an old saying? Oh, I've never heard it before. But
that's heard that one. Yeah, white supremacists don't get fired, they get transferred. He's fine. He's somewhere, somebody's taking care of him. Whenever a white person does something and they get fired or they get called a pariah, they get money raised somewhere. Somebody's going to look out for them. So the white supremacists, they know not to let one of their own fall.
Hey, I hate to break in here for a second, but didn't we have a black president for the last 8 years? If you're saying that the only people in charge are white people, how do you explain Obama being our president for the last 8 years?
Oh, he's a pet. He's a mascot.
He knows that. Hey, Jared knows that. When you put a black person in a position, listen, when you put a black person, when the white supremacists will elevate a black person, there are two rules, and these rules have never faltered. Number one, you do not punish white people. And number two, you do not help black people in large numbers. And Obama did not do either of those things, so he's fine. So
it seems like Trump has actually helped black people more. You know, recently it said Trump has the lowest African-American unemployment rate, and the African-American Democrats, they wouldn't even stand for that.
That's a lie. They proved it was a lie. They put out the stats. That's a lie. The unemployment rates, they've increased. That's a complete lie. But deception is white supremacy. But
well, I wanted to ask one question that keeps coming up in the chat. So people keep asking, and this question is for Tariq, and then Jared, you can respond. They say, if Black Lives Matter, why is there so much black on black crime, and why is there such a substantial amount of blacks doing crime and murder to other blacks?
That's a lie. There is not black people doing a lot of crime. The only high crime
rate, Chicago, for
example. That's it. Chicago is the go-to place because there is no black crime in large numbers anywhere else. That's another lie. They used to justify black people in large numbers. Black crime rates are not high because black crime rates have always been the same. There's nothing unique about black crime rates. Isn't that right, Jared?
You're wrong about that. No, black crime rates are very high, not just Chicago, in Baltimore, in Washington, in Newark.
But why are the black crime rates high, Jared?
Oh, I think you know very well what the answer about that question is.
I just stole
I
a bunch
think
of stuff the other day, so I
wait,
can't deal with all of the stolen stuff in my house. But go ahead.
To me, it's much more interesting that you genuinely appear to believe that the black violent crime rate is no higher than the white rate. Let's just leave it at that, because you appear to believe that, and I find that fascinating. But I think there are other things that are actually rather more interesting.
Well,
But wait.
But the black crime rate has always been high because blackness is itself a crime. Being a black person, more things are illegal if you're black. It's always been like that. The black crime rate goes back, it's been high since the early 1900s.
Okay, so when a black person kills another black person, that's because being black is a crime?
No, because most people who are in jail are not in jail for murder. They're in jail for nonviolent drug offenses.
I'm talking about the murder rate.
Because that's very rare that black people commit high crimes of murder. We don't commit murder like that. That is a lie. That's
a lie. Okay, and the black unemployment.
If that was the case, most black people would be in jail for murder. Black people are not in jail for murder for the most part. We're talking they're in there for nonviolent drug offenses.
Wait. So, okay, the statistics that come out of overwhelmingly black cities that suggest a high murder rate are a lie, as is the statistics about the black unemployment rate. That too is a lie?
The black unemployment rate is high because
wait. You said
white supremacists control the job, so that's always going to be high.
Wait, but no, didn't you tell me that when Baked Alaska earlier said that the black unemployment rate is at a record low under Trump, you said that was a lie, right?
Yeah, because the black unemployment rate is high. It's always been high. The black unemployment rate has always been high.
Well, wait, but then are you or aren't you disputing Donald Trump's claim that it is lower now than when it was under Obama?
Not low. It's still high. What? It's high now. It's high. The unemployment rate is high. I mean, y'all can try to spin it any way you can,
but it's lower than it's ever been in history, I think, is the point.
No, it's not. That's not true. That's more I'm white and I say so. But Jared, why are black people so violent? Why are black people violent?
Okay, you want the answer to that question?
I do. I want to know the answer.
It's a combination of low average IQ and high serum testosterone combined with a lesser ability to defer gratification. Because the combination of low IQ and high testosterone, no matter what the race of the person, makes a man more likely to commit crimes, primarily of violence, but other crimes as well. Furthermore, an inability to defer gratification. And you can prove this if you take a group of white children, a group of black children, and you say to them, you have a choice of either 1 marshmallow now or 3 marshmallows a half an hour from now. Asian children are more likely to say, well, I'll wait and I'll get the 3 marshmallows. Then the Asian are the most likely, then comes whites, then comes blacks. Black children want that 1 marshmallow now, even if it means they don't get 3 marshmallows in a half an hour. That kind of mentality of being unwilling to sacrifice now for the future lends itself to a kind of smash and grab mentality that makes people more likely to commit crimes. So it's a combination of those 3 things. And you find
it doesn't have anything with being in a system where you're systematically deprived of things, because black people are systematically deprived of resources in every area of activity.
Then why are the violent crime rates so high in African countries as well? Why are they high? Why are they high in Haiti?
That's a complete bald-faced lie.
Okay, another lie. All right, sorry.
A week or so ago, the crime rate there is damn near non-existent. In many African countries, the crime rates are extremely low, so that's not true, sir. But
sorry, yet another lie, yet another white supremacist lie.
There's a lot of lies going on here.
Yeah, a lot of lying going here.
Jared, okay, well, shit.
What's that?
Okay, let me ask you, Jared. If black people, if we do have a lower IQ, and we can't defer gratification, and hell, you're making some very good points that the testosterone level has an effect on the brain based on the environment, and black people are genetically, we're just born violent. What should white people do to black people?
To black people? Well, I don't think white people should do anything to black people. And I think that the races are better off living separately. And it sounds to me as though you would agree with that, insofar as white people are incurably white supremacist. Wouldn't you be better off with your own independent country, away from the influence of all these wicked white people?
Every time black people do try to do that, the white supremacists come over there, take over the country, and drain the resources. So where are we going to go in a global system of white supremacy, Jared?
There's just no way out for you poor guys.
Where do we go? Where do we go that's not dominated by white supremacy?
Well, if you assume that the entire world, including the North Pole and Antarctica, are dominated by white supremacy, then you're right. You're out of luck.
But I'm asking a serious question. Where do black people go? If we're going to have an ethno-black state and ethno-white state, where can black people go to where we will not be dominated by white supremacy? Where?
Okay. If you then grant that it is theoretically possible for blacks to have a country of their own, whether it's in North America or in Africa or in Haiti, then the proper solution would be to find some kind of division within the United States. And so blacks should have their territory where they can be whatever it is their destiny is to be. And believe me.
When black people try to do that, the white supremacists destroy it, Jared.
Wait. No. In the case of Liberia, white people were very happy for the Liberians to establish Liberia. They helped them go. They did their best to make it a success. It was the Liberians who ended up making it not work. And when Marcus Garvey wanted to send his people to Liberia, it was the Liberians who told him, no, we're not interested in you, Marcus. We have our own little place here. We don't want you coming to dominate us. There would have been plenty of white people who would have said, Marcus, take your boys and go.
Well, in Liberia, they just dropped off a bunch of people who had no connection with the land, and they didn't give them any resources. So that created a conflict. So you just can't drop off somewhere. They didn't have a connection with Liberia. You just drop people off who were born and raised here generation after generation and just drop them off into some random land and then say, okay, go at it. Of course, there's going to be conflict. If you take white Americans, there's going to be a conflict.
No, I'm not talking about conflict. In fact, once the Liberians established themselves as top of the heap, there was a certain amount of conflict, but they established a country. And wait, what? And the white people were happy for them to go. The people of the American
dominated Liberia. The white dominated Liberia. They dominated the economy there, and they still do dominate the economy over there.
Of course, in your view, white people dominate the economy of the moon.
I'm just talking about facts, sir. They dominate the economy, the banking, all of the resources over there, all through West Africa. So I'm talking real talk here. Where can we go? Where can
Well, if you believe, you must have a very, very high regard for white people. You must think white people are the cleverest, most accomplished manipulators in the history of the world. White people are only about 15% of the population, and they dominate the world. They control everything.
Where should black people go? Where should you allow
don't you guys have like an entire continent called Africa? Isn't that?
No, that's dominated. He just told us. That's completely under the thumb of the white man.
I mean, where are white people supposed to go? I think that's probably better.
Europe. Go back to Europe.
That's been flooded with refugees.
It's not that flooded. But the refugees are going there because you took the resources out of Africa over there. So where are we going to go? See, I want a solution. This is why this is white supremacy, the religion. There's this religion. There's no end. There's no beginning. This whole let's practice white supremacy into perpetuity, and let's pass the collection plate around. Because now I'm talking about.
Is there such a thing as black supremacy? Is there Asian supremacy? Is it exclusive to white people?
You cannot have two supremes. That's a contradiction of terms. It's literally Can I have?
No. So I do have a question. You said that not.
Solution. What should done with black people? I do not want to dance around that because y'all talking about.
I've told you. I think.
Where? We talking logistics. See, we're throwing out these open-ended things. That's basically rhetoric, but there are no real logistics behind it. Like, just go back to Africa. That's rhetoric. No. Where can we go? Seriously.
Well, I don't have a particular part of the United States that I think should be set aside for black people. But I think if we started talking about race in a serious way, we would recognize that blacks and whites have tried to live together for 400 years and it's not working out.
So
If this were a marriage, it would be.
You are in power. You
Come
are.
on, please let me finish.
I just want an answer. I don't want to filibuster now because I really want a real answer.
Well, I don't have a particular place in mind, but if we were to agree that that is the solution, we could certainly work something out. It would be not difficult at all. What?
Let's work it out right now. What should we work out? Where should we go?
Oh, there might be parts of the South that should be exclusively black. There might be, that would probably be the obvious place. I think the question of the details of where to go are lesser. What's that?
We've done that. Where black communities in the South and the white supremacists just go and destroy them. They just go and say, hey, a black person raped a white woman. Burn down. They've always done that, sir.
Wait. They have not always done that. They sent, black people were sent to Africa with the blessing of the whites.
No, they weren't.
Sierra Leone, let me finish, please. Sierra Leone was started by freed black people who were freed by the British and the slave trade with their blessing. And they said,
because the British were fighting, they were fighting for the British and the British set it up for them. Let's talk.
No, they were not fighting for the British. If the British found any kind of slave trade going on, they had abolished slavery within the empire in 1835. And if they caught people who were in a slaver ship, they would take them to Sierra Leone and they would say, here you go, you guys are free, make the most of it.
Freetown.
White people have what? Yes, Freetown. That's exactly the name of the place.
Why was it called Freetown?
Because they were freed from the transatlantic, of course. And the point is, they were given the blessing of white people to go and do what you wish to do. The same for decolonization. Colonization in Africa lasted from maybe in the mid 1800s to 1960, maybe a century's time. And when black people said, look, we are tired of being colonized, get out. The British left. The French left. Eventually, the Portuguese left. They all said, okay, you want to run the show? You can run the show. White people are perfectly happy for black people to be where they are and run the show.
You're not. No, then that's not true. You drop them off, don't give them any resources after raping them for centuries. Don't give them resources, then control their economy. You're not letting them be themselves. Just like over in Zimbabwe, just like in Haiti, they have trade sanctions on all of these.
Trade sanctions. Look, there is an enormous amount of foreign aid to Haiti and to Africa. Is this? You think this is a big lie too? You think that the billions that have been
rape Haiti, they rape the oil and the gold out of Haiti and drop off a bag of rice? That's foreign trade. That's rape, sir. I was about Haiti. I was just over there. They're raping Haiti. They're not helping.
There is no gold. There is no oil in Haiti.
Okay.
And no gold.
I'm white, not say so.
If you were there and you found gold and oil, then you should be a rich man.
Sir.
Wait. Why is there even? Wait. Tell me. Wait. Why is there even a penny of aid to any of these countries? Why would the white supremacists give even a penny of aid?
Because they took the resources out of them, especially Africa. In Africa, they drained the resources out of.
Wait. And they feel guilty? Why the aid?
By guilty aid, you put up a pretext of you doing something positive, but you're still raping the country.
But why would they even bother to pretend they're doing something good?
You take the resources and go in, you send the missionaries in and say, hey, look, I'm your friend, I'm bringing food. And the missionaries and the military, they always work hand in hand. You send them the missionaries first, and then once you get a foothold in there, here comes the military, taking the gold, the silver, the cobalt, the diamonds, and everything else. You will not allow black folks to have an ethno-black state because we're in a global system of white supremacy, sir. So it's just circular rhetoric, Mr. Taylor, sir.
Wait. No, so
you're practicing the religion of white supremacy. It's the open-ended white supremacy, sir.
What's the solution to this open-ended white supremacy? What's the solution?
If I knew the solution, I would be putting it on billboards right now. Black people have not figured out how to not be dominated by white supremacy. The problem is, you know what, unfortunately, a lot of black folks don't even realize we're in a global system of white supremacy. That's the sad thing. I kind of realize it, but I'm in the minority here. And this is why the white supremacists are so powerful.
Okay. Now, you realize white people are probably only 15% of the population of the world.
No, they're less than that. You're 8% of the population of the world.
Okay, 8%. That's fine. And yet, this 8%, manages to dominate the entire globe.
Yes.
How come?
Because the white supremacists were smart enough to use deception in a way that has never been used before. Black people across the planet, they've been used to this honor system with dealing with each other, and they have not realized that because most people, well, not most, the whole planet was black at one point. If we
really?
It was.
North America, South America?
Yes, absolutely. Look at the Olmec statues down in South America. Even in Britain, they just came out with a story talking about Cheddar Man was a black people up in modern Britain. So we dominated the planet.
The whole planet?
The whole planet. The whole planet.
Okay, wait, great. You have the whole planet.
You guys, are you, Tariq, sorry to interrupt. Are you, do you believe the theory that you guys, black people built the pyramids? Is that true?
Yes.
Of course.
Who else built them? Who else built them? Who else built them? 3,000 years ago.
You believe you were Kangs? Is that true?
No. Who built the pyramids 3,000 years ago?
Well, as a matter of fact, let me answer this question.
Come on, go ahead.
Yes. They have just done a set of DNA tests on ancient Egyptian mummies. They tested a set of mummies. Oh, now you're going to tell me the results were lies because they're white people who did it, and it's all white supremacist baloney. So can't believe it's just like crime rates. It's just like the unemployment rate. All white supremacist lies.
Get it out, make it believe. Come on.
I don't even have to spit it out. You already tell. Okay.
No,
what they found was this. They tested mummies from between 1380 BC until 425 AD. And they found that the DNA of these people is very closely related to the ancient people of present-day Israel, Jordan, Syria. That these were Middle Eastern people. Today's Egyptians, which I don't know if you would call them black, but today's Egyptians have some black admixture, but that admixture showed up about 700 years ago. The people who built the pyramids were by no means sub-Saharan Africans, and that has been clear for years.
Or even the paintings, the statues, all of it has shown that they were, even over in the so-called Middle East where you say they originated from, how come there are not 3,000-year-old structures in a similar manner there?
Well, why should there be? I mean, it would just happen that, well,
the ones that... You're trying to say a group of people left where they came from.
No, I'm not saying they left there.
Went to another country, built up all these structures and didn't do it where they were from?
Well, they did it where they happened to be when they had the resources and the idea to do it. Of course, within the Middle East, there were these enormous ziggurats and the Babylonian hanging gardens. They had quite an accomplished civilization there as well. But my point is,
now you got pyramids down in Ethiopia and other parts of southern Africa. You have stone structures, but in the Middle East, you don't have 3,000-year-old statues even remotely close to what was in Egypt. So this whole theory that they were building stuff in Africa that they didn't build in the country of origin makes.
I'm not saying it's the country of origin. The point is they are genetically similar to the people of that area who built the ziggurats and the hanging gardens and the Colossus of Rhodes and all of that sort of thing. Those are the people.
The so-called Middle East, that was just another satellite of Africa. All of that stuff was controlled by Africa. These were black African people. So that's just what it is.
Okay. And so you're telling me that the entire globe was dominated by Africans, and they had this honor system by black people. Yes, black people. And they had this honor system. They were trusting, wonderful, simple friends of the earth. And then along came these white people, and they, although they're a tiny minority, they tricked and hoodwinked and deceived them into a status of inferiority. Is that your view?
Yes, they did.
Okay.
100%.
Wow. Now, where did the white people come from? Were they created by a guy on Patmos, Yaqub? Did Yaqub cook them up?
I look at it from a scientific standpoint. The white supremacists came out during the Warmian Ice Age. This is when the people who are classified as white now were depigmented because they were in the Warmian Ice Age and they lost the melanin being stuck in the ice. And the nose became alkaline, the lips became thinner. The
alkaline,
to protect the neck because of the heat thing. So there's a scientific reason for it. Not to say anybody's inferior or superior. There's scientific adaptations to the body that causes people to become depigmented. So that's what.
Okay, so there were black people everywhere, but white people. Now, then, where did white people appear from?
Came from Europe. They came out of Europe during the Warmian Ice. After the Warmian Ice, the whites were fairly new. Even scientists say this. White-skinned people, the story came out today in a European publication saying that white-skinned people really is about 6,000 to 8,000 years old, relatively new.
Well, that could very well be. But so the point is, all of the people up until 6,000 years ago were basically black people.
Yeah,
and then this tiny number of whites appeared, but they were so clever, so diabolical that they now dominate the world.
The white supremacists were the ones who came down and intermixed with other people. They had to come up with a system of white supremacy in order to survive, because they realized something. And really, white supremacy really started dominating 500 years ago. Because remember, when you guys were going through the Dark Ages in Europe, it was actually black people called the Moors who came in there and brought in civilization and ushered in the Renaissance era to save the Europeans from dying. You almost died out because of the plague. So it was the Moors who came in there and ushered in a new era. That's why they have a saying, thank heaven for 7-Eleven. That's because the Moors came in 7-Eleven. So the Moors helped create universities and all types of things there. But when they got the Moors out, this is when white supremacy started happening. So there's a direct correlation between the Moors and white supremacy.
Okay, so until the Moors came, now the Moors came all the way up to Poitiers in France in 732, and they were beaten back there. They were stuck there. But hold on. But until they showed up, there was nothing on the order of a civilization, nothing like a university, and without them, there wouldn't have been any of that stuff. The Romans, for example, or the Greeks, for example, they were just penny ante folks who just didn't have any kind of civilization. Right?
There was all of Rome.
Or maybe they were all black to begin with.
No. When the Romans were a fixed mulatto race, just like the Greeks. They were a fixed mulatto race. Well, this is why Greeks and Italians, they weren't considered white until fairly recently. There's a reason why. Wait. And Napoleon had a saying, Africa starts in Rome. So that meant that those are really mulatto people. So
we have statues of Greeks and Romans. They don't look the least bit mulatto to me. Am I cross-eyed, or what's my problem?
Those statues are built in the 1800s. You have statues at museums that don't have a scratch in them. That's supposed to be 2,000 years old. That's ridiculous. Those are forgeries. Many of them
forgeries. So the white supremacists came up with these forgeries to convince themselves that the Greeks and the Romans were white?
Absolutely. I didn't say that. No. Didn't say that.
Okay. Why were they? Who forged them and why?
They whitened them up a little bit more later on down the line. Because again, Greeks and Romans were not considered white until like the 1920s and 30s. They didn't consider them white for a long time.
Okay.
So that's why they call them guineas. Let's go back to the guinea thing. That's why they would call Italians guineas.
We have a common question coming up in the chat again that I need to address. So they're asking if these industries there's many industries that we see that are not dominated by white people. And people are giving the example of Hollywood is mostly run, the news media, by Jewish people. They're talking about the NBA, is mostly African-American players and things like that. So how can you say that everything is white dominated when we see some industries like Hollywood or the NBA that are clearly not white dominated?
They are, because the people you're saying that's Jewish, they're still white. Religion and race are two different things.
So, there is racially Jewish, like Ashkenazi is
still white, still classified as white.
So what all is classified as white? Because earlier you were saying, the Irish might not be white, other people, but you think the Jews are white?
There are white Jews. There are white Jews. Not the Jews are white. There are white Jews. Jewish is a religion. You got jet black Jews.
There's also a racial factor to it, right?
No, there's no racial factor.
So why, when you do a 23andMe, why do you get Ashkenazi Jew? Why does that come up in your?
Don't know what that is. I don't know what the DNA thing is, but I want to know why.
Well, I'm telling you that it does come up.
Well, why do they classify themselves as white? The Ashkenazi Jews. Why do they classify themselves as white?
I don't know. That I'm not Jewish. I don't really know the answer to that question. But the point is there are different industries that are not dominated
I want to get on that
whites.
White thing, because they're Jewish people who are white. You have Jewish people who practice white supremacy too. Like in Israel. You go to Israel and there's black Jews who are being discriminated against by the white Jews.
So is there white supremacy going on in Israel?
Yes, because they're trying to kick out a lot of African Jews.
Look, there's white supremacy everywhere in the world. We were told that white supremacy dominates the planet.
Japan, for instance, is 98.4% ethnic Japanese, I believe.
Right.
How is Japan run by white supremacy?
Well, they control the economy. They control the economy, and they can.
But there's no white people there. How could they control the economy if they're not even there?
White people in many African countries, and they control the economy. You control directly and indirectly. Just like Haiti, they got trade sanctions on Haiti. There are no white people in Haiti, but they control the economy. That's how white supremacy runs.
I mean, it sounds like black people are pretty weak if they can't control their own countries.
Ding, 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 ding. I agree. We are very weak.
Oh, we're agreeing. Okay.
Collectively, we haven't figured out that we're in a global system of white supremacy. I'm one of the few people who have figured this shit out. I'm sorry with my language. We've been in a weakened state for a long time. We are.
So what is your best solution? I know you said you haven't figured it out, but if you come up with something, what you would do? What?
I would execute the solution. I would tell people.
You would execute white people?
What?
You said execute. What? Who are you executing?
Okay, I execute the solution.
Oh, okay.
Do the solution.
I would do the solution.
Right, yeah, I would do the solution. I would do the action, whatever it takes to educate people. Come on, let's watch the word.
Okay, go on.
But as far as the NBA, it's the teams are owned by white people, so they still dominate the players. So,
and someone else in the chat also asked a question. They said, if white people dominate and love mistreating black people and all this stuff, why would they still let them exist? Why wouldn't they just terminate them? Like, why these white supremacists that you're talking about, why wouldn't they just wipe all the black people out?
Because you will not be able to practice white supremacy then. You need black people here to practice white supremacy.
Wouldn't the ultimate white supremacy be just it's all white people? Isn't that the white supremacist dream?
That's no fun. You need people to mistreat. That makes you a white supremacist. If you got rid of all the black people, you start killing each other just like you did in Europe. You need black people.
Okay. Now, see, tell me this. Are white people uniquely evil? I mean, that sounds like an awful, terrible thing to say about any group of people, that we need people to kick around. Are white people uniquely evil?
The white supremacists, they need black people to kick around and non-whites. That's the only thing that gets a white supremacist up in the morning, the desire and the ability to kick around people who are non-white. That's a religion. But you don't even have a solution. I ask you for a solution, you start talking in circles. There's no solution. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to prove that white supremacy is a religion. I have proved it. It's supposed to be practiced to perpetuity. There is no end game for it.
Okay, well then why are you even fighting it if there's no solution to this thing?
Because anytime you're mistreated, there's no solution for you. No, you don't. The white supremacists don't have a solution. See,
we do. We so-called white supremacists do. We just want to separate. We just want to separate. We want to be left alone.
We want to separate. We've tried that and separate where.
Let's try it again. I thought it succeeded.
Where you can't give me a place where we're going to separate where you're not going to interfere. Where can we separate where the white supremacists are not going to interfere and just leave us to our own devices? Y'all haven't done it. Don't let it happen.
But I think Liberia and Sierra Leone have good examples, but you don't like that. Okay, but look, I do think this is significant and interesting, that you genuinely think that we white people, we would just be in a, what's that? Okay, white supremacists. But you're not sure how many of us really are white supremacists, but there are enough of us to run the world.
Yes.
We run the world. We may be a minority, but we white supremacists are so smart and so clever and so diabolical, we run the world.
Yes.
Now the people, okay, so these very, very powerful, important people in the world, they need to have black people around to kick around. Is that right? That's what they live on.
Yes.
That's what makes them happy. That gives them a reason to exist, is kicking around black people, even though they're probably millionaires or billionaires, and they probably never see a black person in their entire daily life. But they need to know that they're at least out there so they could kick them around if they wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that.
Well, what about the European countries that have, a majority white, or Japan, like I said earlier, they're not really pushing black people around.
Japan?
Yeah.
No, they're not pushing black people around because they're not white supremacists, but they're controlled by the white supremacists. They're dominated by the white supremacists.
But then
where do these white supremacists meet? Where's their like secret headquarters?
Usually Yahoo message boards. That's one of the places. Reddit, 4chan.
Are you trolling, Tariq? Also a lot of people in the chat have accused you of. Are you trolling here? Are you being serious?
Y'all know I'm dead serious.
He's serious. Yeah.
Okay.
But see, okay, then I do have one last question. Then I can leave.
Okay.
Okay, in a country like Iceland or say Denmark, no black people, practically no black people. Wouldn't they be much better off if they imported several tens of thousands, maybe 1 million or so black people, so they could kick them around? Then wouldn't they be much happier?
But maybe the people in Iceland are not white supremacists. Maybe they don't want to do that. You know, Iceland, they never colonized any African countries. They never done that.
Okay,
but
so you grant the possibility that there are at least some white people who don't want to kick around black people and who are perfect. What's that?
Yeah, there's a lot of white people who don't want to kick around black people. I won't say most, but many white people are not white supremacists. I said that throughout the whole program here.
Okay, but somehow,
in their body. The last thing they want to do is harm a black person or anybody. Unfortunately, they're not as powerful as the white supremacists who do want to harm black people and other non.
Why are the white supremacists the ones who are so smart and who are able to rule, whereas the nice white people are unable to rule? Why is that?
We would like to know that too, and that's the problem. The white supremacists are smarter than the non-whites, and they're smarter than the white people who don't believe in white supremacy. I will give you that. I'll concede that. The white supremacists are very, very smart, and I learned that years ago, being around white supremacists and just really talking to them. I said, these people are pretty damn smart, and I got to give it to them.
Okay, who are these people? I'd like some names.
Well, I don't know. I was with a tour guide in Samoa. It was a white dude. And I was talking to him, and I realized he was a white supremacist based on some of the little coded words he was saying about the local people. But he was very smart, and it really dawned on me how smart white supremacists are and how they get their hooks into certain societies. Because he went to Samoa, and he had sex with a lot of the women there and had different children so he could own land. And I'm like, that's some smart shit. These white supremacists figure out all types of diabolical ways to get stuff. And that just really dawned on me how smart they were.
Wait, so this tour guide was diabolically smart, but he's making a living as a tour guide in Samoa?
In Samoa, and he had all types of land and the whole thing. So this guy was living he's living in a tropical paradise, chilling. And he's just a tour guide talking about butterflies and leaves. And I'm thinking, but every time, you know what? Every time I would ask him about the race of the people and all that, then he would play dumb. See, that's another thing. The white supremacists know how to play dumb when it's convenient.
I see. Okay. Well, back to Alaska. It's about 8:30 now.
All right. So right. Why don't we have Jared go ahead and give your closing statement, and then how you think this went. I think you guys agree maybe on something. I mean, Tariq, would you call yourself like a black nationalist?
No, not a black nationalist.
Not black.
I'm a victim of white supremacy.
Okay. Because I know I've seen, Jared Taylor, he's had pictures with Jesse Jackson. He's actually talked to lots of African-American leaders in our country. I don't know if you knew that, but hopefully you guys can have some common ground somewhere. But anyways, Jared, go ahead and give your closing statement, and then you can go ahead and pop off, and then we'll do a little with Tariq.
Well, no, I just find it fascinating and very edifying to learn that people like me apparently rule the world, and that Tariq Nasheed has such a high opinion of whites that he believes that this tiny, tiny handful of folks have managed to dominate and rule the world for their own gain and for their own advantage. On the other hand, I'm still a little bit baffled by the idea that these people who are so smart and so powerful that they can run the world, nevertheless, their purpose for existence is kicking around black people. That I find a little bit difficult to believe, but if that's the case, then I suspect they're a bunch of real twisted and perverted folks. And I wouldn't suspect that people that twisted and perverted are that smart so that they can dominate the world by just their tiny, tiny numbers. Also, I still don't understand why it is that although white supremacy is presumably depends on the notion that blacks are less intelligent than whites, anybody who actually talks about this gets cast into outer darkness. This, to me, is yet again one of these weird inconsistencies about America as a white supremacist country. But I'm very pleased and gratified that we got Mr. Nasheed to put his views on the record in such a clear and uncompromising way. And it's been a pleasure to talk to both of you. And I'm sorry that I can't stay longer, but I wish you a very pleasant and productive evening.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right.
Let me do my closing. I got to get out here and get with the
Yep.
children.
So, first of all, did you enjoy your time on the Bake Alaska show?
Yeah,
I know me and you have had a history back and forth on Twitter, but I am now suspended from Twitter. So see, the secret white supremacists, are banning people like me and Jared Taylor from Twitter. Wouldn't we get to stay on if white supremacy is in charge of all these companies?
Man, not really, because see, you guys people are dying around some of you guys, man. That's the problem. There's people getting killed, and these companies are going to be on the hook for so many people getting killed, and they let you guys spew that rhetoric online. So these companies have to cover their ass, even if they're white supremacists themselves. You guys are going to another level.
They don't only got to cover their ass; they got to wash their ass.
Wash that ass. You dig?
Yo, can you say people have been requesting in the chat? Are you we just want a sound clip. Are you able to say the phrase "we was Kangs"?
No, I'm not saying that bullshit.
You're not. Do you know what? Are you familiar with the meme?
That's all white supremacist meme, and we got another one called "We was Aryan Gods."
Wait, that's a white supremacist meme?
Yeah, we got one. We were Aryan Gods.
We was Aryan Gods. Okay, fair enough. We was Aryan Gods, and then your version is.
Yeah, you know what it is. But
anyway, all right, go ahead. Do your closing statement.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, I was going to prove that white supremacy is a religion, and that's exactly what I proved. There is no end. There is no beginning. It's supposed to be practiced into perpetuity. When I asked Jared Taylor what's the solution for all the low IQs of blacks, he danced around. There is no solution. I asked him, what is the solution for black people? Where should we go? He could not give me a place. He kept talking about a white ethno state and we should separate. When I asked where, there is no solution. When we talk about the violence, there is no solution. And again, that just proved everything that I said what I was going to prove, that white supremacy is a religion. And we have to replace that religion with a system of justice.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Nasheed. And one more time, so tell people how they can follow you and just sort of, your mood. Tell people just a tidbit about your movie and sort of what your next things are what you're gonna be doing in 2018.
Yeah, you guys go get my movie. I know a lot of white supremacists listen to you, but I know y'all like good movies. 1804movie.com. That's my new movie that's out. It's the #2 documentary on Amazon. Y'all go to follow me on Twitter. Don't troll with your bullshit fake accounts.
Yeah, be nice. I don't. Me and Tariq don't see eye to eye, but be nice to him. Don't go harass him. Be nice. Have good conversations for sure.
That's it. All right, babe.